We are using a bit of an unusual process to quilt this quilt because I plan to embroider it, and I like the way embroidery through batting and a quilt looks, which I'm choosing to stitch in the ditch through just the top of the quilt and the batting layer only. I am going to start in the middle of the quilt to run my first row of stitching in the ditch and then work my way out. I'm using a foot that has a guide so that it'll sit right in between the joins, making it easy for me to keep my stitching in that seam allowance. Be sure to remove any pins as you approach them, and note that the nap of the fabric will cover up any places where you might have gone slightly to one side of the seam or the other.
Hi, I'm Ellen with Meissner Sewing and Vacuum Center in Sacramento, and I'm going to show you today a great way to join two strips of fabric together sewn on the diagonal. The easy way would be to put the two short ends together and sew a straight seam, but that would give us a lot of bulk and it would accentuate the fact that my plaids may not align. So I'm going to use my Baby Lock Crescendo to sew a diagonal seam. I'm going to take two strips of fabric here. I've got 5-inch strips cut. I lay them at right angles to each other, and I still have my salvages on there, but I'm going to cut those off later. I've created this V right here. I'm going to position that V right up against the needle that I dropped, and then I'm just going to lower my presser foot. I'm going to turn on my laser beam over here, and you can see the red line up here. I'm going to pivot my fabric until this line points right to this next corner over here, and then I'm just going to sew. And we're going to make one great big long strip so that we can make a ruffle.
So we're now going to take the strips that Ellen showed us how to join using that great little mitered trick. We're going to gather them up into a ruffle, and then we're going to attach them to our Minky throw. Now we could do all of this in one step, but my personal preference is to go ahead and gather all of my strips first and then attach them to my quilt. So I have a ruffler foot attached to my machine. You can set it to gather every stitch, every 6th stitch, or every 12th stitch. I have it set so that it'll take a little tuck every 6th stitch. And then all you need to do is sew. Okay, so now that we have all of our ruffle strip gathered up, we're going to lay it with all of the raw edges together and with the ruffle pointed towards the inside of the quilt, so that once we stitch it and apply the backing, it's going to pop out this way. I like to start kind of near one of the corners and just let the raw edge of the ruffle, or one of the ends of the ruffle, just float off the edge like so. We'll cut it off when we're done. I do like to pin so that I only have to sew once. So raw edges together. Pin as much as you feel is necessary. You'll probably want a few more pins in the corner than you'll need on the straightaway. As you come around the corner, make sure that you don't pull or stretch. Just kind of flatten that ruffle down. So as we approach the area where our ruffles joined, we're going to keep pinning. And pin past the overlap. Now at this point I'm going to put my pins horizontally so that you can see what's going to happen when we flip the ruffle back. If you have a pin hiding underneath, I would remove it and put it through all the layers so that you don't accidentally stitch through it when you're joining your ruffle to the edge of your throw. Once I've gone just a couple of inches past that join, I am going to just bring the ruffle off the edge just like we did at the start. Pin it, and then I'm going to go ahead and clip that excess Now when we stitch across this edge, this join, when we flip our ruffle back, it'll be a virtually invisible join on the right side. So now we're going to go ahead and stitch our ruffle in place on our throw. I'm going to simply follow the previous stitching line that I used to gather up the ruffle. That way, all of my previous stitching will be hidden when I go ahead and sew the backing on. Be sure to remove your pins as you're stitching. It's never a good idea to sew over pins. The ruffle is attached, then we'll be ready to embroider.